right, day 2 of testing. Today we are out here at Thornhill Dragstrip. This is allegedly the oldest still operating track in the entire country. It's in Morning View, Kentucky. It's like 20 minutes from my house, and like I said, this is kind of where I cut my teeth. My dad raced here since the early 80s. My grandpa actually raced here back in the early 60s. I actually have a trophy at my shop of his that was in 1962. He's running C-Gas here. So a ton of history of this track. If I get a minute, I will try to do a little video of the track and show you guys. It's just a nitty gritty, it's quarter mile, but you know, depending on how fast you go, I don't know if I'd want to run quarter here, but it's just, there's a ton of history here. It's a really cool track. This is one of the first places I ever made any passes at. First place I had, my very first pass was at Edgewater, and my second passes were here at Thornhill. So a lot of history with me and this track. So I've never had my truck here before. Actually haven't raced anything, not JP's or my truck here, so this will be my first time back here in a long time. So we'll see how it goes. We're not going to do a spool up today. Conditions are really similar to yesterday. No reason to waste the nitrous, put more wear and tear on it. Usually I would say, you know, do a spool up when you get to the track, but since we just did all that work yesterday, conditions are so similar. The engine's already hot just from being out here, so I think we're just gonna roll into first test session, ready to rock and roll. So stick around. So before we go up to make this run, the only thing that we've changed from Friday night to Saturday now is the tire pressure. We dropped it down to 13.5, like what we were going to run on that last pass. And then I went to the hardware store and I got a spring to put on the kill cable. I had a lot of spring tension on it. I checked it, you know, myself, and I felt like there's no way that it could vibrate, you know, overcome what this spring's capable of. So should be good to go on all that. We go up to make this first run, and it's not that stellar, mainly because of me. So I haven't been to Thornhill in a long time, and like I said, I'd never been there with my truck, and they had just redone the starting line all the way to the 330 in concrete, which is really nice, but it's narrow. Like the groove is the width of the concrete, basically, and then you have a little bit of asphalt on each side, maybe 2 foot of asphalt on each side, and then on the right side after that is grass. So when you have a wide truck, you know, this thing's 80 inches from tire to tire, you're taking up the whole track, pretty much the whole groove. So there's not a lot of room for error, and there's nothing. Like once you get out of the groove, it is bare as bare could be. It's probably loose. There's probably dirt and marbles and everything out there. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, the track is hot. Somebody told me it was 136-degree track temp. It was humid that day. It was hot. And I said, okay, well, you know, if it does anything weird at all, I'm going to get out of it. So go up there, turn the first bulb on, foot brakes, pull it up nicely, roll it in, no drama, let go of the brake, and tires are still a little upset, and so it just gave me a little bit of wheel input, and honestly, like, if I was anywhere else, I probably wouldn't have lifted. I think I would have just drove through it, but because I was, like, in my mind, I'm thinking, this is narrow, I pedaled the throttle once, pretty much it launched and set back, and I felt the wheel do a little bit, and I just, jacked the throttle one time and got back in it, because I can't lift, because I'm stupid, and it went dead straight after that. It was perfectly fine, and let it make the 1-2 shift, and it, made the 1-2 shift real nice. I ran it out a little bit longer than I was supposed to. I ran it out about midway through second gear, clicked it off. It went a 144.0, 60 foot, so a little slower than the 60 foot from last night. And then it went 420 to the 330, and I was out of it way early. So bring it back and checking everything over. go to watching videos, go to pull the log, and I pulled the log up, and it made 17.5 pounds of boost on the limiter right before I let go of the trans brake, and then I lost my log. There's nothing. And so my data logger, you can make that thing do whatever you want. Like, you can turn it on with any of the sensor inputs. So I turn it on at 2 pounds of boost because I don't really care about anything below 2 pounds of boost. And then that way it turns the log off, you know, basically as soon as you chop out of the throttle, because I don't really need to be logging the whole drive back and all that stuff. I just want a log to run. And that's how we ran it on JP's, and it worked really good. Well, I lost my log. And I'm like, man. And I had this problem once before with JP's truck, where the logger just quit logging. And it was unexplainable, and we couldn't really figure out why. So I kind of just chalked it up as, hey, you know, something glitched, and, you know, we lost our data. And I was like, man, that sucks. So I popped the hood on the truck. I was just, you know, checking everything over, going over everything, and I find the culprit. So my boost pressure sensor is on the back of the AFC on the injection pump, and it had vibrated that fitting loose, and it blew off, and so it was just, the sensor was just hanging there. So basically what happened on the starting line is it came up on boost, it got up on the limiter, and that sensor was loose enough to where it finally vibrated enough off, and it blew it out. So essentially I had a 1/4-inch boost leak the entire time it left the starting line. So I don't know what that does for power, but it doesn't help. It doesn't really matter. It wasn't a stellar run. You know, I had to pedal it, and it wasn't going to be that super fast anyways. But that's why we lost data, which sucks, because once again, more stupid things. But that's why in the last video, or a couple of videos ago, I was telling you guys about like how important it is to nut and bolt everything. And that's why, like, these things vibrate a lot. They shake a lot. You would be amazed at what the harmonics of that engine being solid mounted in the chassis can do to vibrate things loose. So it's just one of those things that you got to check. You know, you got to check everything all the time. So then after I seen that, so then I started checking, you know, I checked all my nitrous lines. I checked everything I could check, basically. So we turn it around, and we go back up there to make another run. And so kind of sucks to not have data, because I don't know, you know, I don't have any, I didn't have any wheel speed. I can't do anything except for rely on my internal G meter at this point, and video, of course. So I looked at the video, and I noticed that the front wasn't traveling as much. The front extension seemed too tight to me. It seemed like from where we had it last year, the front traveled more, and it seemed like the compression is too stiff. I put those 200-pound springs on it this year as opposed to the 175s that I was running last year, because I felt like I needed to control compression more, and I was relying too much on the shock to do so. But we left the compression settings alone of where they were last year. We just added more spring, and I felt like, from what I've seen in the video, that I needed to loosen compression up to allow it to squat more, and I needed to loosen extension in the front to allow it to travel. And the reason for this is so that way it'll weight transfer, and it'll keep the weight back there. What I was seeing happen was the tire sets, you know, it'll snap. If you slow-mo the video, the tire will go down, so it looks like it extends, but it's really not. It's just the tire falling out. And then the chassis wants to come down in the rear, but it doesn't want to come up in the front. So it's really limiting the weight transfer. And then because it's too stiff on compression, it just comes down real slow, and then it wants to come back up as that tire starts to round back up, and it kind of gives it a little, you know, porpoise effect, and that's upsetting the tire. So I went to the front to loosen the extension, and found that the front extension was at full tight. I thought I hadn't touched it, but I guess I missed that on my check. Last year we were running at 2 clicks from full tight, at the very last pass we made. So somehow between now and then, it got full tight. And that's why I've been doing better about taking notes, so I can go back during the off season or between test sessions, and I can go over all this stuff with a more fine-tooth comb. But anyways, we put it back to 2 clicks from full tight on the front, and then I loosened up the rear compression 2 clicks, so that way I can try to get that weight transfer that I'm looking for. Loosening the front up also takes a little bit of work away from the front axle, and that's kind of what I want to do, because I think the front axle is working a little bit too much. So the other thing, JP really wants me to leave on more boost, and I was against that at first, but after I watched more and more videos, I understand why he kind of wants me to. It's not necessarily driving into power yet, but you can kind of like, the boost graph looks really nice, but with the, like, you could hear it in the video and the RPM and stuff, it's like there's a noticeable power change. It's not like a, you know, wah, bah. It's like wah, and even though the boost looks good, it just doesn't, like, it seems like it does probably need to be hit a little bit harder on the starting line, and really the only way to do that is with more boost, because even with more nitrous, like off the trans brake, it's still a delay. You really need to, if you're going to try to hit it harder off the starting line, it needs to be with boost. So we go up there with these changes. I did not up the boost. We're, you know, made 17.5 last time. That's what I'm expecting it to make again this time. So we go up there to make our pass, and spool it up, roll it in, I set the brake, and our gremlin of fuel shutoff has returned. It does the same thing it did Friday night. It falls on its face. I let out of it kind of from a little bit of state of aggravation. I try it one more time just to see what it would do. It spools wicks right back up, and as soon as it hits 16 pounds of boost, boom, falls on its face again. So cruise on down the track, another drive of shame. And they had just ran some juniors before me, so there was a bunch of lane traffic. So usually I'll just drive back after the pass, but I stopped down there and I shut it off, you know, because I didn't want to get caught up in that traffic. The juniors kind of take a while to get back, and it was a really hot day. I didn't want it to get hot. But when I went to shut it off, I noticed that I barely had to pull the kill cable to kill it. So right there, indication that for whatever reason that spring I put on didn't work. It still moved the fuel shutoff. So when I get back to the pits, I examine it a little further, and it's weird. The spring pressure is plenty of spring pressure. Like, I have the spring really stretched, and you can take the lever and the shutoff lever, and you can move it yourself by hand, and it'll just snap right back. But if you pull the pull cable all the way closed and let go, it'll barely move, and then it'll stop. It'll stop like halfway between shut off and running. And it's because that cable has some restriction in it, the way that it's like routed. It's kind of got a bind in it, and that bind overcomes the spring pressure when that cable is in that position. So once again, what happened is the cable wasn't closed all the way, and the harmonics of the engine vibrated it back out. I really did a lot of thinking on why has this become a problem. This was not a problem last year. We only have 16 runs on the truck. That was going to be our 17th attempt. So it's still really new, you know. But at the same time, like, I couldn't tell you how many spool ups, probably 40, you know, maybe 50. I've been pretty, you know, around the truck a lot, and this is a problem that we've not had. And so I'm trying to figure out why all of a sudden this is happening. And I go back and I think, okay, well, when did this start happening? And because this is the first, you know, UCC was our first test session, and we only made that one, you know, attempt of a 60-foot. But other than that, Friday night and tonight, Saturday night, were my two only outings this year. So what has changed between last year and this year? And this sounds crazy, but the injection lines that I put on this engine are quite a bit longer than the conventional style injection lines there. So that way I can pull the valve cover off without having to touch the lines. And they're not showing any adverse effect, really. But what they have changed is because the fuel has to travel further, it has slowed the timing down a little bit, and it has made the engine a little lopier. So if it's sitting there at idle, before it used to have this kind of like rolly sound to it, if I could explain it. It was more of like a whoop, 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 whoop. And now it's like a consistent chop, you know, more like whoop, 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 whoop. And so what that's done is it's changed the whole like harmonic vibration of the engine, and it vibrates more now because of that. Like if it's sitting at idle now, if you just barely get it up off of idle, that'll go away. But if you're sitting there idling, it has a vibration that it never had before, a different vibration, we'll call it. So what I think is going on, there's no way for me to prove this is just what I think, is I think that the harmonics that have been created by changing the injection lines and changing essentially the way that it idles is why now all of a sudden we're seeing some weird vibration there, which probably also contributed to that boost pressure sensor working its way loose, because it just has a vibration in it that it didn't have before, and there's going to be things that are affected by that. So really nothing I can do to combat that. Honestly, what it's done is it's shown me that this is a potential problem, and I need to be corrected. It's not the injection line's fault. It's my fault. It's you know, it's the setup. The the kill cable needs to be either done away with. I need to do something else with that, or I need to route it in a fashion in which the spring pressure can do all the work. I know that like Jared on the Dragster, Jared Jones and Dan Scheid, they have an air valve on their fuel shutoff. So basically just like the staging limiter that I showed you guys, but for that. So essentially when they flip like an ignition on switch, it'll extend that rod and it'll keep it closed. And that works great. But the only problem with that is that you have to have your air pressure onto it before you can start it, and I like to not turn my nitrous on until after it's running, in case the event that there was a nitrous solenoid that got stuck open, and maybe you don't hear it. You know, maybe you're in the staging lanes and they're running cars and stuff, and if you start the engine with a stuck nitrous solenoid that's open, that's going to be a bad day. I don't know that you'll hurt anything, but you very well could. So I always like to start it first, then turn the nitrous on, so that way if for some reason there was a stuck solenoid, it would probably just kill the engine. It wouldn't, you know, the engine wouldn't be trying to start with that nitrous in the cylinder. And then of course you could put CO2 on board and just run the CO2 to control that, but I really hate adding things. Like if you already have something that'll run all your air requirements, I would rather just run that. What I'm really thinking that I like to do is, if anybody's familiar with like RC airplanes, run a servo. So essentially I can turn ignition on and it'll energize the servo, and it'll zip, and it'll pull the, you know, push the kill cable forward and hold it there. And then when I take power away from the servo, it'll go back to kill mode, basically. So I'm going to look into that and see what it would take to maybe do some sort of like big model airplane RC servo on there. I know you can use the factory style 12 valve fuel shut off, and I've thought about it. But man, every guy that I've talked to that's ran one of those before has had that thing shut off on them. And I guess I'm not in any better boat with where I'm at right now. But I would hate to put something on, I would hate to buy something and put it on the truck knowing that there's a high probability of it being an issue. It's one thing to do something and then it just becomes an issue that you weren't foreseeing, but I have a hard time going into something knowing that it might not work. But anyhow, so we decided to call it quits for the night. It was kind of getting late anyways, and I didn't want to go up there and do that again. And if I'm not confident in going to the starting line, I don't even want to go to the starting line. It's a waste of nitrous, it's a waste of fuel, it's a waste of wear and tear on the engine. I don't want to go up there unless I think that we're good. And, you know, I could have just taken the kill cable off and pulled the spring, but then I would have had to been shutting it off with the air shut off, and that's really not ideal. You don't really want to do that to the turbo a lot. It probably would be okay at idle, to be honest, but it's just one of those things that, like, if it's not right, I'd rather load up and go home. And I kind of learned that attitude from being around JP and JP's truck. So JP's a helicopter pilot, and in the helicopter world, you don't get second chances. So if something's not right, you don't fly. And he's kind of always used that mentality on his truck, and I've learned that mentality from him. So if I'm not 100% confident with what's going on, I'm going to call it quits. I'm going to go home, I'm going to fix it, make it right. I'm going to test it here, you know, do some spool ups, make sure it's good, make sure we don't have any problems before we go drag everything back out to the track and try again. But so I'm going to be doing that soon, and I will keep you guys posted on what remedy I come up with on that. So hopefully I can save you guys some time and heartache and aggravation, so you guys don't have to go through these struggles. That's really the whole point of these videos. It's not, I don't want these videos to be like, oh, you know, look at this track outing to me. Like, I'm trying to, like, everything I want to do should be educational. So I'm trying to show you guys the process of what I do. I try to show you my thought process, try to show you the struggles that I go through, so that way you guys can better your programs, hopefully, without dealing with some of this stuff that I've been dealing with. So, like always, guys, I appreciate it watching. Click that like and subscribe if you like what I'm putting out there. Tell your buddies. It definitely helps. I never ask for subscribers. I'm never going to sit here and beg for them, but I definitely appreciate them, and it helps energize me to keep this content coming for you guys. So I appreciate it, and we will catch you on the next one.